Welcome to the December meeting of the Zonta Says Now Intercontinental Think Tank. My name is Carol Theobald, and I have the privilege of leading the Zonta Says Now working group. I am hosting this meeting today from Perth in Western Australia. Please remember to keep your microphone on mute during presentations, and you're welcome to ask questions or make comments in the chat line. We will record today's meeting, but conversations in the breakout rooms will not be in the final recording. As you can see, we have a full program, so let's begin. We're delighted to welcome you all, including Sally Tuominen and first-timers to the think tank. Please use the chat line to say hello and where you are joining us from today and your local time. Each month, we highlight a United Nations International Day. The 10th of December 2023 marked the 75th anniversary of the United Nations General Assembly proclaiming the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. This was one of the first UN documents to elaborate the principles of human rights mentioned in the UN Charter. The declaration is claimed to be the most translated document in the world, having been translated into 561 languages and dialects so far. You can contribute a new translation if it's not already in the collection. An important extension to human rights was made on the 28th of July 2022, when the UN General Assembly recognized the right to a clean, healthy environment and sustainable environment as a human right. This information note explains what the resolution is all about and how important it is to address the triple planetary crises of climate change, nature loss, and pollution. It also highlights the disproportionate impacts on women and girls, children, and Indigenous people. It's a good document for your holiday reading list. Our Intercontinental Think Tank is coordinated by our Zonta Says Now working group, and various members will be helping with today's meeting. I'll now ask Angela Brockman to explain why Zonta Says Now.
Well, let's remind ourselves why Zonta Says Now is to gender equal climate action. This train was built during the Industrial Revolution, a time when humans started putting more greenhouse gas emissions into our atmosphere. Click. This is where they were accumulating and forming the blanket around the planet and causing global heating and associated extreme weather events. Extreme droughts, fires, floods, and storms trigger social disruption, causing millions of people to lose their livelihoods and their homes. The social disruption magnifies any existing inequalities, including gender inequalities. Zonta Says Now stops the train by advocating for governments to meet their obligation under the Paris Climate Agreement and closing the gender equality gaps in education, health, and economic opportunity and safety. We use 3 tools to achieve this: our website, our think tanks, and our framework for action. We are guided by Zonta International's strategic plan and statement on climate change. We have created fact sheets, leaflets, and action guides to help us on our climate journey, and our new visual art gallery is opening soon. Julie, would you please tell us what's been happening since our last meeting?
Thanks, Angela. I'm happy to be here and happy to tell everyone what's happening. So we've applied to the NGO CSW 68. We have a small team put together to do a presentation. The date will be sometime between March 10 and 22 in 2024. We're excited. It will be our second one. We won't have a think tank meeting in March, so we can focus on the CSW event. We hope all of you will come. The virtual art gallery has been receiving entries, quite a few. We're really excited about that. And they'll be on the display in January. The social media team meets in the WhatsApp group and has been sharing ideas. The alliances team will get into gear in the new year. And our proposal to conduct a Zonta Says Now workshop has also been accepted. The theme is, are you and your community disaster ready? This is scheduled for Thursday, the 27th of June in Brisbane. Registrations for the convention open in January. Check out the convention website for more details. Have you seen the latest edition of the Zonta magazine that contained the latest version of Zonta's strategic plan? And also a 2-page article on how Zonta Says Now is working to achieve climate justice. So exciting. I'm going to now hand it over to Bobby to introduce today's speakers. Bobby?
Thank you, Julie. We actually have 2 speakers today. The first speaker is Joan Kabayambi. Joan is a member of the Zonta Club of Kampala in Uganda and a member of the Zonta International United Nations Committee, as well as being the Area 3 Director in District 18. When Zonta International was accredited with the United Nations Environment Program earlier this year, Joan became the Zonta International representative at the UNEP. The UNEP meets in Nairobi in Kenya, which is a country that borders on Uganda. Joan has now attended a couple of UNEP events and will share with us her experiences so far. Please put any questions in the chat line as you think of them, and we will get to them at the end. Over to you, Joan.
Thank you very much for that kind introduction. I have been introduced, dear Sister Zontians. I know my governor is here, my chair, Pamela Morgan, you're here. I greet you all.
Thank you.
And my presentation next will be lined up in that way, the overview of UNEP, my personal account of my experience so far, the events that we have attended as Zonta and myself in particular, what we can learn from the meetings, how can we best work with UNEP to achieve our Zonta mission and our priorities. Next, United Nations Environment Program, which we abbreviate as UNEP, is housed in Nairobi. It's a UN Global Authority on Environment. UNEP works with governments, states, civil society, private sector, entities to address pressing environmental challenges. UNEP drives transformational change on the climate crisis in planetary crisis, like climate change, biodiversity loss, and pollution. UNEP provides evidence to inform policy decisions to governments, to states, and all those intergovernmental organizations. Next. UNEP has accredited Zonta. This process began in April. It was completed in June, and it is a process that takes a while. Zonta International met all the certain standards that UNEP accredits member states to. So when we met it, because of our cause on gender equal climate change action now, then it was very important for Zonta International to be accredited by the global organization or authority that deals with environment. So this accreditation takes in attendance of regional meetings, to contribute to civil society statements, Zonta receives UN working documents. You know, Zonta has always worked with the United Nations, makes written statements and contribution to these UN documents, makes oral statements at these very forums and meetings, and attends public meetings and committees, assemblies, and global group meetings. That's the accreditation Zonta has with UNEP. And this was a great opportunity where I am centered and I belong in Nairobi. Next. Now, this process, next slide, there are different observer status that is given this accreditation. And for us as Zonta International, we are observers from non-governmental organizations. There are several others. Next. So these member states, all of them, like you see them. So our accreditation came in actually on the 9th, 8th of June, 2023. And then also Zonta International gave me a letter to introduce me to UNEP. That is the second slide letter from Zonta. Next. And there have been several events. So I have already informed you that we got accreditation in June, but there was a first meeting that I should have attended, which was in May, because we had not attained that accreditation, though we had been invited. I was not able to attend, but was the first intergovernmental consultation meeting on nature-based solutions to global consultations. But nevertheless, when we got accreditation, there were other pre-intergovernmental negotiation committee session 3 webinars that I attended. I will allude to that later on. These meetings were running from August 22nd to October 17th, which were preparing new member states to the very big meeting that was attended in November, which I will talk about later on. So these pre-INCA 3 meetings, webinars, were about 10, and they had different topics on governance and structure of multilateral environmental agreements, identifying chemicals and polymers. All those issues were discussed in these webinars. And I had to attend because it was preparing me for the work that I would do and I am doing at the moment. They were talking about how to align national plans with a global treaty on pollution and on plastic pollution and marine environment, which was a big meeting that I'm talking about shortly. They were sharing information. Several organizations had to present their inputs on the global treaty that the National Intergovernmental Negotiation Committee is discussing. And then later, next, there were other meetings. That was one of the highlights that I can talk about, that a lot was learned in those webinars. Then we had the Intercontinental think tank, which is this one. We joined as a UN committee in July. Many of you remember when I was introduced to this meeting with Pamela, and we have continued to benefit to work with this think tank that is hosting this meeting today. Then the INCA, the Intergovernmental Negotiation Committee 3, I attended that one in Nairobi. It was on the 13th to 19th November. Next, this meeting was the highlight, I would say, for this global treaty. The first INCA meeting, like I mentioned in the webinars, was held in Uruguay, November 22nd, 2022. The second INCA was in June in Paris, in France. Then the third one the third is the third session, which was in November that I attended. Next. So at this meeting, which was the third session, it has a chair, it has a general secretary, and these are the people who drive these sessions. So in this third session, which is the Road to Global Plastic Treaty, next, was held for that 1 week in the UN Nairobi. That is the Karibu, meaning welcome to Kenya, the UNEP, where I attended. Next. And it was opened by the President of Kenya, William Ruto, who is very pertinent. And during that week, there was also a holiday in Nairobi where everybody had to plant a tree. He told us not to leave the UNEP compound without planting a tree. Trees were provided, and it was wonderful. He opened the session. That's the President of Kenya. Next. And giving a little background to this meeting, it was at when UNEP was at 50 years, a resolution was made to make a global treaty on plastic pollution and environmental marine environment. And because of the greenhouses, we already saw that trend, high temperatures, extreme weather events occurring faster and intense. And that is what drove the beginning and negotiations between governments, states, and other observers, member states, to begin this road to a treaty that will stop pollution on plastics and also increase marine safety, because all plastics go to the oceans. So, and what I saw most was that most of the affected people are not the ones who caused the problem. Next, the problem is caused by people, and the effects come to us, the people who are here. Still on the background, we see the fossils or non-renewable waste, which it makes a very great contribution to climate change, which is a problem. And they are slow-acting, it's a slow-acting poison to our planet and to our economy, to our women, to our children, and to our girls. Next. And still, so we need healthy oceans, we need healthy ecosystems, we need plastics to end, and also new products which are safe to be in place. Because we all understand that 80% of these plastics end up in oceans. They kill the health of the oceans. They kill the water. The water today, even if it was filtered, it will never be safe again with plastic pollution. Next. So that makes the background of the global treaty. So what can Zonta pick out of this? So as the meeting were going on, many things were negotiated, discussed. There were so many lobbyists in the meeting who had their own ideas. But what I jointly saw was, if we had a joint voice with other people to support this treaty, it would take on, and it will be able, we'll be able to have it in place for the globe. And definitely, if we don't, no matter how much we filter our water, we'll continue to have impure water in all its form. And this has a negative effect on our health. So Zonta can pick such things, and we do advocacy on them. Next. Then we can also start working on waste management, sorting and separating plastics from waste products. Plastic destroys nature due to its harmful effect. It's all round, health-wise, emotionally, economically. It destroys the environment and also the health of human beings, and particularly women and girls who are affected. Plastic bags are the main cause of pollution. They enter water bodies, they enter the soil, and soil will never get its sensitivity, not even its fertility. So this is something that we can pick, make noise about it under our climate, gender, climate justice. Next. Women and girls have, what can UNEP pick from us? Because as much as we pick ideas, issues, causes from the meetings, they also have something they can pick from us. They need to know that women and girls have unique needs regarding the environment. We cannot be treated at the same level with the men or other counterparts. Women are unique, their vulnerabilities are unique, so they can pick that from us. They can also have a pick from our ideas that our health is unique and our safety concerns are unique as women. And it all crowns in gender-based violence, emotionally, economically, physically. All this affects the women and girls. UNEP can pick that. So that is a voice that we need to allude. Next. Gender-related consequences of climate change. I have already talked about that. We need to disaggregate data for proper planning globally. If women, children, girls and boys, actions are taken on how, according to their data, how many and how much is needed for each, it would bring proper planning. Climate literacy for girls in school, girls to be involved in STEM, sciences and mathematics and environment, especially environmental engineering, so that women can have a voice is also key. Then women's full participation in the economy is very important, and that is something UNEP can pick and make sure that in everything women can participate. Women can be fully, potentially used in the economy, in the society to make them live to their full potential. Next. So those are picks for UNEP. United Nations is a very beautiful compound, very flowery with so many flags. My flag is up there above my head, and it was a good time that I had there. Next. In the meeting, I was able to make a point to say participation of women is key, and I was caught on camera. So that was one of the highlights, because as civil society, as NGOs, we have a voice as accredited organizations. Next, as I end the same meeting, and I was able to find many organizations, waste pickers, international, people who do marine cleaning, and I was able to have a chat, and we have continued to have conversation along those areas. And then as I end, next, please, thank you for listening to me. Questions and concerns are welcome. I thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Joan, for sharing all that information with us and for participating in all those events on our behalf. So now it's time for our second speaker. And our second speaker is Pamela Morgan. Don't know if we have a picture to put up there, but Pam is a member of the Zonta Club of Essex County, District 3 in the US. She is the chair of Zonta International's United Nations Committee and the Zonta International representative at the UN. She leads a team of representatives in New York, Geneva, Vienna, Paris, and Bangkok. In her capacity as Zonta International representative to the UN, she also serves on the executive committee of NGO CSW New York. And the NGO Committee on Migration. Pamela is also the co-chair of NGO-CSW New York's 68th Forum. And today, Pam will present a personal account of her role as co-convener of NGO-CSW 68 and how it fits in with CSW. So again, I hope you have put some more questions in the chat, but do that again during this presentation and we will get to all of them at the end. So at this point, I turn it over to you, Pam.
Thank you, Bobby and Carol, for inviting me. And may I please share my screen?
Yep.
And thanks to Joan for that comprehensive overview. And it's interesting that the president of Kenya is following Nobel Peace Prize winner Wangari Maathai's process of planting trees. You know how important. She started that decades ago. So it's good to see that it's still alive. She's one of my personal heroes. Okay. So CSW is something I've sort of sleep with now. It's interesting how our lives change. So NGO CSW New York is the convener of the NGOs in New York and around the globe, focused on CSW. So what I plan to do today is give an overview of CSW 68, and then I'd like to have a discussion. I'd like for you to pose questions, and I don't know if Carol would prefer for them to be put in the chat or if you want people to raise their hand. I'm comfortable with either.
Okay, whatever you're comfortable with, Pamela, we're happy to accommodate.
Okay, thank you. So CSW 68 is going to take place from March 10th to the 22nd, 2024 in New York. And as you probably know, there are two aspects to CSW. But we're going to start with the formal CSW 68 Bureau. And these are the people who are directly responsible for negotiating the terms of the agreed conclusions and then in the actual acceptance of the agreed conclusions. It's up to us as civil society to hold member states' feet to the fire as far as implementation. So we'll talk about that later. But the chair of the CSW Bureau is from Philippines, and it's very interesting. He is very well regarded. We've been able to meet with him a few times now. He's very well regarded, and people really do defer to him. And he seems as though he wants to be fair and just. We'll see what the agreed conclusions look like in order for us to really determine how far he's able to go. As some of you may realize, this is probably one of the most divided times in history, in recent history, as far as the political divisions. So there are about 55 states that I've been told that are very, very right, and they want to have a hard line about women and gender. In fact, there was just recently a conference at the UN hosted by Guatemala of the far right organizations and member states. So all of that influences the way that the agreed conclusions are negotiated. So we have the chair from the Philippines, and then the vice chair, Ambassador Squeff from Argentina, Maris Berbergs, who is the vice chair from Latvia, Ambassador Brandt from Netherlands, and she is actually going to be the chief negotiator for the agreed conclusions. And then we have the representative from Cabo Verde, who is also a vice chair. So you see, we have the African states, Western European, Eastern European, Latin America, Caribbean, and the Philippines represented in the Bureau. The CSW 68 themes, and there are always two themes, a priority theme and a review theme. So the priority theme has 3 points: accelerating the achievement of gender equality for the empowerment of all women and girls by addressing poverty and strengthening institutions and financing with a gender perspective. So those are the 3 areas: addressing poverty, number 1, strengthening institutions, number 2, and then financing with the gender perspective. Those are the 3 targeted areas in the priority theme. And then the review theme that is used to look and to examine the implementation from a previous session is social protection systems, access to public services, and sustainable infrastructure for gender equality and the empowerment of women and girls. And that's from the agreed conclusions of the 63rd session. Now, it's interesting to note that there's a move underfoot to reform CSW and to change it. Historically, CSW had more teeth than it does now. CSW has been weakened. It's been placed under ECOSOC, where the agreed conclusions are not, what I will say is that there is no obligation for any member state to implement them. They are not binding. So in order for them to be implemented, it takes civil societies pushing to take the agreed conclusions to the local government, to the federal government of whatever country you're from, and to really negotiate the implementation. Advocacy is most important. Zonta International, before I move there, I just want you to know that with CSW 68 on UN Women's website, and I have the website right at the top, there is something called expert papers. And the expert papers are what are commissioned prior to the negotiations in order for the Bureau and the 45 member states to understand what experts in the field of those 3 important content areas, how they feel about the theme. And one of the experts actually has a paper on gender responsive climate finance. And I'm going to give this PowerPoint to Carol so that you can access this information yourself. But I think it's very interesting that they were able to find an expert who was able to hone in on climate, which is probably the most pressing problem facing the world at this point. Zonta International statement to the Commission on the Status of Women looked at Zonta International's three key goals. And we know that number 1 was education, number 2, expanding access to information and communications technology, and our third one was on climate change. So Zonta International had 4 key points that they made to the Bureau in their statement. And these are important for members of the think tank to understand, because when you are advocating for what you feel should be in the zero draft. If you're talking to your elected officials, these are 4 points that you need to be able to bring home to them. You know, taking into account human rights, gender equality, and the empowerment of women and girls in your action plans, and the action plans on climate are particularly important. And then upholding the Paris Agreement and making sure that the most marginalized groups, and who's more marginalized than women and girls. So that's the second point. And then ensuring that climate adaptation and mitigation plans address the unique needs of women and the barriers to women's full participation. And then the last one, recognizing the importance of women as decision makers. We know that's important whether we're talking about climate or peace and security or any other area. Women's leadership needs to be acknowledged. So moving on to CSW 68 for NGO CSW, our 5 key areas for advocacy, and advocacy is really what coming to CSW 68, the NGO CSW Forum, coming to New York has to be all about advocacy. And the points that we are trying to make are social justice, education, climate change, economic policy, and debt. Those are the areas that we feel are most critical at this time. So, what are our priorities as far as implementation? Again, civil society organizations represented, being there and being engaged. Feminine leadership, again, is critical. And then we have to understand the member state priorities. Each of us comes from a different country, a different state. What are the priorities from our region, and how can we mesh our priorities so that we can all win? When everyone wins, that's when you have true success. Now, something that is also very, very critical at this time is gender parity in the UN system. The UN recently had a gender review, and it didn't bode too well. So they came to NGO CSW, the Secretary General commissioned a report, and the UN Foundation has actually come to NGO CSW to ask us to help with convening dialogues with women from various regions in order for us to find out what are the issues and how can we make things better. And again, everything goes to achieving SDG 5 that looks at gender equality. So for the NGO CSW Forum, I'm going to go real quickly. I believe most of you are familiar with the NGO CSW 68 Forum, and NGO CSW is the civil society component of CSW. The governmental CSW is where the actual negotiations take place. And as an aside, the zero draft is said to, it will come out at the beginning of February, and the Secretary General's report will come out at the end of January, for those of you who are keeping track. So we have orientation sessions that actually started on November 8th with our open forum, and we're going to have 3 additional sessions between January and February. During CSW, we are partnering with UN Women to have morning briefings. We will have 8. We will not have one on the 10th, one on the 11th. However, we will have them for the next 8 days. We're not going to have one on the last day. And then we, believe it or not, we received over 1,000 applications for parallel events for this year. So we're in the process of scheduling the parallel events. There will also be regional caucuses, and they are held during CSW. Last year, they were at the Ford Foundation, and there were problems with access. So they will be held virtually this year. And we're also going to try something new. People have, people are suffering right now. Many women come to CSW with angst, anxiety, and trauma. So this year we are putting together a healing and community space. So we'll have massage and yoga and meditation, and we're going to try to have quiet space and really provide an environment where women will be able to relax and become rejuvenated. We're having an artisan fair again. And instead of having the virtual Vienna Cafe, we are encouraging people who are delegates. And as you know, Zonta International has the ability to have 20 official delegates, and other people can attend sessions in the UN by attending ticketed events. So once you're in the UN, you can go to the Vienna Cafe to meet with people in member states and to do other networking. We hope to have a networking reception. We thought we were going to have it at the Ford Foundation, and then we just recently found out that the Ford Foundation is going to close the building for the first week of CSW. I think there is something that has to do with the political situation that's going on with conflicts that is precipitating this security-based closing of the Ford Foundation. So we'll see about the reception. And then we'll have conversation circles. And the conversation circles give attendees the ability to discuss a variety of topics. And the topics that we're going to discuss during the conversation circle are our advocacy priorities: social justice, education, climate change, debt crisis, and economic policy. And I would be really pleased if someone from the caucus, I don't know who would be willing to serve as a co-moderator for a conversation circle. But if Carol or Julie or Pia or someone is interested, please let me know. And if you are interested, here is the information to contact us. And that concludes my session. Thank you so much for your time and for listening.
Thank you so much also, Pam, for a very comprehensive presentation. We look forward to CSW 68. And thank you to you, Joan, as well. I hope that you've all had a chance to put your questions in the chat, and I will now turn it over to Pia.
Thank you, Bobby. Before we move on, Bobby, are there any questions in the chat line, maybe?
Yes, there are a couple.
Okay.
From Judith Ainsworth, she's asking Joan, where did the May 16th consultation take place?
Lost Joan.
Are you
Joan?
there?
Are you still there?
Might have dropped
I don't
out.
think she's on right now.
No,
Oh.
she's not there.
Okay. Well,
So
we
were
have
there
a
any other? Yeah.
second question for her also, which we can try to ask her another time, or maybe Pam even has some input on this. Karen asked, in terms of gender equal climate action for Joan, what are your findings and impression after the first meetings you attended? And how aware were the other parties of the gender aspects?
I don't know Joan's impressions. I can't respond, but I do know that in the UN meetings, people are most often extremely well prepared. They come having done a lot of research, a lot of collaboration. It's the most interesting volunteer community because everyone is passionate about their work and spends untold hours researching so that when they go to the meetings, they know the correct questions to ask, and they're fierce advocates. And that's across the board at every UN meeting I've ever attended.
Okay, wonderful.
Thank
We
you.
do have a couple other questions for Pamela. From Julie, is the conversation circle going to be virtual or in person?
Virtual.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Right.
Now there may be 3 others that are that will be in person. The UNECE, which is the European caucus, had a meeting on emerging themes, and the review theme is supposed to be emerging themes, and 3 rose to the top. That was migrants, widows, and something I can't remember. I'm sorry, but we really think that we need to look at having conversation circles in person if we have space. With 1,000 applicants for parallel events, we've never had that many. That's unheard of. And the space is limited. So if there's any way for us to manage to have 3 extra time slots, we'll have 3 in person, but these most important ones will be virtual so that people from all over the world can participate.
Well, thank you so much. There are a lot of thank yous in the chat as well. I'll read the last one from Sala. Thank you both to both of the presenters, important and interesting.
I think that
So-
Joan might be back online, Bobby. So should we just try her again?
Yes, Joan, are you there?
She's on mute if she is. Just
Can you
looking in the-
unmute yourself, Joan?
No. No, she might be having problems.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Well, then I turn it back to Pia at this point.
Okay, thank you, Bobby. It's time to move to the breakout rooms for today. And we want to focus on the question, how can we in Zonta get the most from our relationship with the UN, EP and CSW? And I think we will aim for maybe 10 minutes of discussion and then 10 minutes to review. Or what do you think, Carol? We had 15
yes,
before, but we are a bit behind.
Yeah, we're a bit behind, so we'll try and give about 12 minutes in each way and see how we go. All right. So
yeah, perfect.
And hopefully I think I've got people. I'm going to open the rooms now and enjoy your conversations. We'll have a 1-minute feedback from each group. I know that in group 1, I think we had Karen. Karen, can you just give a quick summary of what you covered in your group? What was the overarching theme?
Yes, thank you. And thank you, Marie, because she already gave a little bit of feedback of it. We, I think, discussed together also with Suzanne Lees and Regine Remy and others that it's mostly important still to inform all Zontians about CSW. And also in Australia, lots of Zontians are not aware of what CSW is. So I think we need more activities also, although we have a lot of them already, but to raise the awareness about this thing. And another conclusion was made by Regine from Germany, that is that in our clubs lots of Zontians are not used to raise their voice in political questions. She said that's also a generation problem a little bit, but this especially goes for Zonta, I think. I can observe this as well. It's all about discussing that in our clubs, discussing it at area level as well as at district level. And draw the attention also to the event page of Zonta International and to all those wonderful webinars Pamela and her team are offering also during CSW. And we need to really show that you can participate in the NGO CSW whenever you want. You don't need anything for it. You can apply for that really easily. Just go into that. And that's what we also have to do very concretely, I think, with some issues of our heart as Zontians.
Brilliant. Julie, did you want to give a quick update on what you covered in your group? Was it similar, or was there different things covered, or what did you talk about?
We covered two things. We had a great discussion on plastic pollution. Judith Ainsworth is in Africa right now, and she's going to visit a place where they're trying to recycle plastics, but she said it's a huge problem. And Eileen had given us this wonderful idea of what she's doing with her club. And it's called, it's a plastic roundup of film plastic, like baggies. So if they round up a certain amount and they send it to this place that makes Trex, which is a plastic-based decking material, then it's a challenge that they're having. And if you send 1,000 pounds, then you get a bench, which would be kind of cool. But also it's teaching people about plastic pollution and having them take action. So it's really exciting. She's going to send our USA caucus some outcome information. And then we had a great conversation with Pamela, who talked about how we can bridge the CSW NGO and just the CSW in particular at the UN with our clubs, so that we have more engagement, more understanding, more just more interest, and hence everybody will understand more about the advocacy portion and how it's so important in our world. So she gave us some great answers. Like she said, every club will have a different idea of how to do the bridge, like documentaries, watching the recordings from the NGO, monthly meetings, going to a meeting, having a speaker, all kinds of things. So thank you, Pamela. Thank you, Judith. Thank you, Dee, and thank you. We had Bobby and Angela. and thank you, Eileen. So that was it.
And Pia, did you want to just mention what happened in your group, just very quickly?
Very quickly, okay, and I say thank you to Marie. I agree that we are all learning from each other and inspire each other, but as you said, and we did in our group. Renee Kopok, you have visited CSW several times, and you said it's really good, the job Zonta is doing there, but it needs to be more done in New York, but they are more ahead in Geneva. That's what was interesting to hear. And Marinette from Geneva, he confirmed that it's a good work going on there, together with the UN Women and SIDA organization, and they put a lot of time there. They don't have a lot of money, but they put a lot of time. And then we have Joan in our group, and you said it's so good to work club to club. You work very much together with clubs in Netherlands and Switzerland, and individual clubs can help each other and do a lot of difference within Zonta. I like that idea. And then just we have Andrea from Uruguay that said it's a slow work there going on to plan the idea of climate change and Zonta and climate justice. That's all. Thank you. Over to Carrie and maybe Karin.
Yes, thank you, Pia. And I just want to add something because Lisa Burton also said something very interesting that even in the US, that the clubs need more awareness about the fact that they can involve themselves also internationally and learn a lot, not only on the local level and on their levels, but on international level with CSW. That's what I wanted to add. But yeah, now let's move on a little bit to, I want to highlight some outcomes and a couple of things from the this year's COP28. And you see a link down under, which goes to a document created by various United Nations organizations and which summarizes the key global climate actions at the COP28. And the document also provides some very useful links to resources. Yes, and you might be interested in some gender-related findings that we observed at this year's COP28. So, well, we had in total 133 world leaders attending, and out of them only 15 were female. Yeah, that's our topic again. And imagine this also already was an increase because last year's COP, there were only 7 leaders who are women. So hopefully this will develop much faster now. And the COP28 United Arab Emirates Declaration on Gender Responsive Just Transitions was endorsed by 78 countries. You see that on the left. And it recognized that urgent action is needed to combat climate change, and countries committed to working collaboratively to support just and inclusive transitions that advance gender equality. And the declaration outlined the goals of the enhanced Lima work program on gender and its gender action plan. And this action plan includes 10 actions, such as incorporating human rights of women and girls in just transition efforts, enhancing access to funding for women and girls in regions most impacted by climate change. That's very important. And promoting measures to reduce, redistribute, and value unpaid care and domestic work, including, promoting the equal sharing of responsibilities between women and men within the household. So please ask your husbands. For the first time, there was a declaration on climate and health that was signed by 143 countries. And this called for countries to create more climate resilient health systems and to better prepare communities and the most vulnerable populations for the impacts of climate change. The Declaration on Agriculture, Food and Climate was signed by 159 countries. And it focused on helping the most vulnerable, especially, of course, women and youth, through scaling up adaptation and resilience activities, promoting food security, and supporting workers in agriculture. And a global call to action was an outcome of a conference held during the COP by a number of agencies, including UN Women, UFCCC, IUCN, and WIDO, counting on a sustainable future for all through gender and environment data calls for action in 5 areas to better collect and use gender environment data in policymaking, finance, and investment. So COP28 was also going to be a little contentious. It was held in the oil and gas state of Dubai. And as you might know, the COP28 president was the CEO of an oil company. And yeah, it's really amazing. We had over 2,400 fossil fuel lobbyists who were registered at this event, and yeah, they have a lot of power and a lot of money and a lot of propaganda. So this makes it a little bit difficult. But the good news, and I come up now first with the good news, was that all countries agreed to a tripling of global renewable energy capacity like solar and wind by 2030. And countries also collectively agreed on the need to rapidly shift away from fossil fuels by accelerating action in this critical decade to achieve net zero by 2050. Yeah, the bad news is that, of course, as we could face in 2023, we had the warmest year on record, and the impacts of climate change are really accelerating. Global greenhouse gas emission trajectories are not in line still with the Paris Agreement. And there's a rapidly narrowing window for raising ambition and implementing existing commitments to achieve it. So yeah, that's overall, it was good news that we are seeing the beginning of the end of fossil fuels, and there was some movement as well on loss and damage payments. That was the great hope at the beginning of the COP conference, and a good initiative, which also had a little bit of chain reaction. But still, of course, we have to ask, will it all be too little and too late? And so with this, to say it in the words of Pamela, yes, let us bring our issues and our goals home to on the local level as well as on the national level to reach more. And so I think with this, I hand it now over to Carol to wrap up the meeting. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Karen, for that summary of what's been going on in COP. With the holiday season approaching, why not give a present to yourself and your friends by making a donation to the Zonta Foundation for Women? And give this present to thank your friends and yourself for taking climate action throughout 2023. Because we know that every action we take today makes it easier for future generations to deal with the impact of climate change. I think this cartoon is brilliant. It just sums it all up. One day, all of this will be yours to deal with, is what the future generations are facing. So finally, to our next meeting, and that will be on Sunday, the 21st of January, 2024, from 6 p.m. to 7:30 UTC. Please register for this meeting now so that the date will be in your calendar. Be aware that the registration links for next year's meetings and the slides and video from today's meeting will be found on our working page on the zontasaysnow.org.au website. There's a one-sheet summary with all the meeting dates on it. And I want to thank Joan and Pamela again today for your presentations.
That was great.
They were fantastic. They really summarized what you did so well, and they brought the United Nations work and CSW work home to us, which was great. And remember, everyone, that through our gender equal climate action, we are building a better world for women and girls. And if you have any questions, please email me and at info@zontasaysnow.org.au. And thank you again to all of you for your support of Zonta Says Now throughout 2023. And here's to us all continuing to build that better world in 2024. So until then, have a wonderful holiday period and keep breathing, keep smiling and have fun. And we'll see you next year. Bye.
Yeah, thank you so
Bye.
much.
Bye.
Merry
Thank you, everyone.
Christmas.